This is Shaina Silva, and welcome to Haiti Prosperity Podcast. I am joined by my father and co host, Daniel Silva, and in this episode, we'll be talking about four major structural forces that should be taken into consideration when analyzing the prospect for the future of a country. These four forces that I'm referencing include demographic forces, environmental forces, economic, and technological forces. So when we're looking at Haiti's prosperity through these four forces, it's going to help us better understand the macro environment that Haiti operates in and give us a clearer picture of the true challenges, the threats, as well as the opportunities that exist. So, Dad, when we talk about these four forces, can you help us understand at a deeper level what each of them means and why each of them is so important when forecasting for the future of a nation?
Yes. Well, as far as demography and human development is concerned, a country needs to have an inventory, to use a layman word, an inventory of the people that need to be serviced. So not to be managed, but to be serviced. And that needs to be tracked and monitored as years are going by.
That's an important key word. Not
Yes.
to be managed, but to be serviced.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's important
Yeah.
because otherwise people may think that they are just managing those people. No,
right.
you're
They're
at
your
the
customer.
service
They are your customer.
of the people.
Right.
And that's key.
That's critical.
And sometimes people are
Forget
confused
that.
about that
Right.
part. And as we have followed population and demography over time, the world population has been growing and even doubling in the past 50 years, whereas before there was a much slower population growth. And you can see that in Haiti, particularly. Haiti is currently at, they say, about 11 million people, but maybe 30 years ago it was at around 5.5 million people. So it has doubled over time, even more than doubled over the past 30 to 50 years.
Right.
So there will be a continued population growth. Expect that by 2035 you could see Haiti around the 19 to 20 million people.
20 million.
Within that
People to serve.
People to serve within that 27,000 square meter as a territory. So those are the parameters that are there to pretend to be a nation. That's what needs to be understood. It's, everybody that is born is a Haitian. So that person needs to be counted for and serviced at some point. And another element of demography and human development as far as Haiti is concerned is that there is a rapid urbanization that's taking place. Right. In other words, there is an exodus from the rural areas into urban settings.
Right.
So towns that used to have maybe 300 to 400 families have grown exponentially into 5,000 family types of little urban settings.
Right.
But in the meantime, the infrastructure remains for those 300 same families.
It's not suitable for more people to come in.
Exactly. So that's why you find
putting pressure.
A lot of pressure on the servicing group, meaning the public sector, and even the private sector is not organized. Maybe somebody who owns a store to sell certain products, but was set for that 300 to 400 family setting as far as even commercial activity, but could not necessarily or does not have the capacity to serve a 5,000 family town.
Right.
And is the financial infrastructure set to support that person in the commercial sector to grow in terms of capacity, in terms of being able to purchase more products and serve more, even physically to change
Have
the
space.
configuration
Right.
of their.
Because those towns were built for a small population.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and I, to this point on demography and human development, I've seen it firsthand traveling to Haiti, how, the slums have grown exponentially over the years, putting incredible pressure on that Port-au-Prince, a Cap-Haïtien, that cannot sustain the level of activity and movement in that city. So
Exactly.
the inflow outflow is a huge something really that needs to be considered more deeply.
Oh yes, in fact, that is at the core of any development. It has to be planned properly based on demography because it's for the people.
To have a certain quality of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so demographics and human development.
Yes, and so demographics can tell you the story about pressure on infrastructure.
And how to plan for those people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you have a town that grows exponentially by tenfold, the number of classroom need to increase by that same exponentiality,
Right.
as opposed to having the same small schools that were there to serve 50 to 60 people now find themselves having
so the city has to be able to adapt with the growth in numbers, but right now the way that is structured, at least in Haiti, it's not adaptable. So everyone is using the same few resources that were set up for only one or two million people.
10 times less,
10 times
as
less.
far as size is concerned.
It's a major issue.
And as we said, it's continued population growth. So by
Right.
2030, 2035,
It's going to be even more people
it will be,
using these few resources.
Exactly.
And that has implications on security. Like today, we talk a lot about the gang violence, but that comes from this overpopulation in these hyper-urban mega cities
Exactly.
as well. The
Exactly.
pressure to fight for resources.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So you can see where it's going
Fundamentally.
if you don't really prepare of sort. So that's in the human development. You talk about education. You have to have the proper educational infrastructure to train those people to live in an urban setting,
To be
because rural life
contributing members of society.
or the urban society, because they came from a rural setting which has a different configuration.
Right.
So all of that needs to take place in order to have a natural growth as opposed to a way that appears to be disorganized and where people can take advantage of others when you don't have the right configuration and understanding of the ecosystem that's built there.
Right. Okay. Well, that seems like a fundamental thing to address, really, is the demographics, really an inventory of your people and their skill sets and how you're going to satisfy the growth of that population and their capacity to add value to the economy through their skills. Now, the second thing you mentioned was environment. And you touched a little bit on the climate impacts, but I think environment is touching on a lot more things. Do you want to deep dive a little bit on what that second pillar of the structural forces is about?
Okay, just as in the demography and human development structural force, you have to recognize that there will be continued population growth. In the environmental sector, you will continue to have an intensification of climate change. In other words, the globe is becoming warmer. It's not changing so far, even though a lot of efforts are being made as far as have certain green policies to reduce the carbon footprint and carbon emission, but it's a long ways to go, and it's being done mostly by very developed countries, that are very far ahead. But developing countries that are just now discovering that they need to use resources in order to develop themselves to become competitive, and all of a sudden you are telling them that no, you need to be green, but they haven't gotten to the level of exploitation that was taking place over time. So there will continue to be climate change. It's getting warmer. And as far as Haiti specifically is concerned, as far as in the environmental sector, you've seen the degradation of the environment.
Waste is a huge problem.
Yes, land degradation. Land that used to be extremely fertile became very dry and essentially unproductive as far as agricultural.
You can't grow food on dry land.
You can't grow food. So you lose some. There is a certain desertification even that take place in some areas that are very dry.
Which can lead to ultimately food insecurity.
Food insecurity and migration, because the people that were living in those settings that were fertile at some point, now all of a sudden cannot even have access to drinkable water or food, have to practically move into other areas of the
where
country.
Those things
so
are
they
accessible.
Become even migrants within the country itself before start thinking about migrating elsewhere. Yes. So there is a first level of migration that takes place.
Inter-country migration.
Yes. And that's why they move mostly toward the urban settings.
Where there's a lot of imported foods that are accessible.
But they become anonymous also, and that the anonymity of the people that moved from a very family and tradition oriented society into the urban setting, they become anonymous, and that's where things may start getting tempted in not following the law. Although in the rural areas you don't find much, but there is a natural law that's sort of guided by the elders of the village and the tradition, etc. In the urban setting, you don't have that. So
different.
It's about survival and
survival of the fittest.
That's in terms what land degradation, misuse of water and pollution
and waste management creating disease, and ultimately, like you said, inter-country migration. But then the environmental impacts, the climate change specifically, is also contributing to migration to other countries like the United States and Latin America. We've seen how every year with hurricanes in the country that have completely ravaged entire towns and cities have led to large numbers of people escaping to look for opportunities elsewhere, knowing that a Port-au-Prince, Cap-Haïtien, or some of those other big cities will not be the most comfortable setting for them. So they get on boats and they try to go to another country. And we've seen as recently as the summer of 2021 how that is an issue as well when they reach the border and they're not let inside and are having to return to their country. So that migration is an issue as well.
Oh, yes. In fact, the environmental, the climate change is a trigger for migration. And it's not just Haiti, it's over the emerging countries and other and underdeveloped countries because they get affected much quicker as in terms of the intensification of climate change.
And mostly because these natural assets are not well managed in the first place. They're not well inventoried, not well managed. And even when you're talking about urban development, structurally, most of these buildings are not even earthquake proof, so they create even greater disaster than if it was planned, knowing that you're living on a fault line. So the environment is playing an incredible role in this intercountry and outer country migration.
Yes.
Which has to be explored further as well.
Correct. So environment contributes to food insecurity as well, because if certain pieces of parcel of lands cannot be exploited, agriculture, is less in terms
you can't
of
feed yourself anymore. The country cannot feed itself.
And biodiversity loss as well, because even in terms of health, the way that the environment was set in a fertile rural environment, there are some elements even in the air that would heal people at when there are some diseases getting into those areas, plus the herbs that they knew how to use traditionally to heal sicknesses no longer exist. So they either become expensive because it comes from elsewhere, or they don't exist at all. So they have to get into the types of medication that
pharmaceuticals
are produced
from
by the major
Western
global pharmaceuticals. And I can tell you that those natural way of healing oneself are much more efficient if you know what you're doing with those things.
Wow. Okay. So the environment is a really, really big piece that so many interconnected elements that really impacts the future of a nation.
Yes.
Lots to explore there. Now, the third one is the economy and the structural force, the economic structural force, and how that is impacted. Tell us a little bit about what we should be thinking about when it comes to the economy as a structural force.
Well, the economy goes across demography, human development, the environment, because they are all parts of the resources that a country has. So the people count.
It's
forest,
essentially the activity of the productivity of the nation.
Yes, that's what creates GDP.
Right.
And you can compute more or less the level of productivity of a country and whether or not it's growing or lessening, declining. So economics is tracking the numbers generated by the demography and in the environment.
Right.
And there are some theories around how to manage all of that to give you a certain balance in terms of
increasing productivity. Yeah, that's extremely important. And usually we tend to stick to that particular structural force, the economy. But as we've seen in just the last few minutes of talking, you can't really dive into the economy without understanding your population and your natural resources.
That's right.
Because the economy is just a result of the productivity of these two things combined.
Correct.
So that's really important to note.
Yes. So, in other words, each person that is born needs to be trained to be
productive, a contributing member of society. Yeah.
And in different areas, and adapting to world events, even though the education itself is not a static activity, it's a dynamic and it has to fit with world
where the markets
affairs,
are going. What does the global market need today? Are your skills from 10 years ago still relevant for the global shifts in the market today? So a very dynamic.
Yes. So in those terms, as far as for Haiti, I think whether it's for people migrating for their own reasons and might be environmental reasons, but if somehow that person was at least trained or educated to operate somewhere else correctly, you would have had even a level of remittance that would be much higher than what the country is receiving today, because the more people can find job quickly or adapt to foreign countries quicker with language and behavior, etc. The quicker they can adapt to those countries and start supporting family that were left behind, etc. So education in any way, shape or form has to be there. It's the bottom line.
Bottom line. And essentially what that does, this perspective, is make it such that you don't have to depend on jobs within the country only. With adapting to where the global economy is going and the skills that are necessary to stay relevant, you can have a job anywhere in the world and still be living in Port-au-Prince.
That's correct. That's for some certain jobs.
What's evolving as the gig economy or the outsourced economy.
Correct.
And that's a huge opportunity there as well.
Oh, yes.
To tap into.
And in fact, several countries live off of that. Meaning working for the global community.
India is a good example of that.
India is a good example.
People hire software developers all the time.
Yes, for a lot of the processes that I truly believe that are, and from experience, I see that Haitians could operate those same types of support to the global economy. In the back office type of support.
Call centers.
Call centers.
Even social media management. That's becoming increasingly important for a lot of companies, small businesses and big. Just something like social media management.
Social media management, data science, because you can run some artificial intelligence parameters to crunch some numbers and help.
And even art. Today, we find that, you cannot have technology scientifically alone without being paired with art, especially when you see how the landscape is transforming to a more user experience centric landscape where aesthetics matter. And aesthetics, you need an artist, a designer to be able to conceive that aesthetic. And the good thing for Haiti is that we have a lot of artists. But do those artists have the skills for that market demand that exists?
Well, that's part of education.
That's part of the education.
If we think that we can contribute to the world of art just in the shape of NFTs or even the movie industry, you have to create a whole, it's an industry in itself. So you have to train people to participate in that marketplace, because at that point being in Haiti or being elsewhere is the same thing. It's the value of your art and which marketplace it belonged to.
Posted on,
It was posted on, and with the platformization of most electronic commerce that's taking place right now, and that's sort of where the youth of Haiti should plug into the platformization, but not remaining isolated and disconnected and in a world where people have to travel to do anything. So I would not name necessarily electronic commerce platforms. We know some of them. They allow people to sort of have their own enterprise within those larger platforms. And I think that there is a good niche there for people to sell their goods either locally or internationally with the proper standards, etc. So that is an element of economic future for Haiti there.
So we're talking about physical and digital economy, value adding services and skill sets to an economy. And the last pillar in the structural forces is technology. We've already been touching a little bit on it and, talking about the digital skills that need to be upgraded if you want to remain relevant as a value adding member of the global economy. But let's dive deeper into what that technology piece looks like. What are the considerations that we really have to investigate there?
Well, technology has its good side and its weaker side. So we'll start with the weaker side first. The speed of technological evolution that's taking place right now, especially in the areas of artificial intelligence and robotics, is rapidly replacing some of the menial tasks that human beings used to do.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, Haiti has abandoned the sophisticated outsourcing work that it used to do in the 80s and moved into more very basic manufacturing kinds of work. And we can see, and we've experienced in Asia, that in certain manufacturing plants, t-shirts and underwear and shirts were being made by robots with precision. They cut the material, they sew it with almost
standards.
no mistakes, no
quality
waste,
control defects.
No waste, and they work 24/7. So it's
which
like
a human cannot do.
Which a human cannot do. No breaks needed besides when a part needs to change, which takes only a few minutes to change. So there will be a localization, a relocalization of the manufacturing process. So the whole sector that deals with t-shirt manufacturing, textile industry, that needs to be reconceived quickly. And that's a public-private effort that needs to be done. And not need to just be a victim of whenever it happens and everybody's
at a
standstill and things of that nature.
People will lose jobs.
You just have to reconfigure, even in terms of benefits or incentives. Government and private sector need to sit down and look at what are the kinds of new incentives we need to have in order to attract international direct investment of sorts. So it has to be reconceived. So we'll talk further about that when we talk about how Haiti should organize itself to face the parameters that we are talking about, like
technological disruptions,
demography and environment and economy and technology. Because and the industries are changing rapidly with the advent of robotics and artificial intelligence. It's very clear, and it's coming at a fast pace. And people, the business community, all they need is really to be precise, be productive, and profit, etc.
And plan.
So that's
plan for what is already known to be coming.
Yes.
Yeah, and adapt.
Yes.
Adapt to it.
Yeah.
And to the point we made about having to stay relevant in the skill set, this technological disruption is going to displace a lot of jobs, but it's also going to create a lot of new jobs. And so the shift in the types of jobs that are available in the market is going to require higher order thinking, more managerial and analytical, right? You're not going to be doing the menial tasks anymore that will be replaced by robots. So the higher order thinking has to be prioritized because
that's
what will be needed. How to manage a facility, how
Yes.
to change parts and update the code inside of a structure. So
how to deploy new software versions,
yes,
etc. There will be needs on
those
that.
are new jobs.
Yeah, because you are talking about Internet of Things. There will be trillions or quintillions of and things, objects that are talking to one another. However, each one of them need to be managed and updated. And so that they can be productive elements of the network, of those new networks.
So it's going to shift to now more people managing machines and software.
Exactly. So the education has to go around that.
and doing things like that.
Yeah.
So that's key.
Correct. Other areas that technology could bring as far as a contribution for Haitians in the future, public health will require as much data as it needs. And with the portables of today that people wear and that are going to become cheaper
like a
and cheaper,
or a smartwatch,
maybe a very cheap bracelet will be able to collect a lot of information on a person.
Right.
So that person can sell that data to a platform that wants world data in terms of health, in terms of food versus,
analyzing
your
a particular demographic
and diseases versus nutrition, etc. So the more data that can be collected, whether that data would be coming from emerging countries or developed countries, and mixing all of that give AI more information as far as public health is concerned, as far as resistance around certain diseases is concerned, and the future of medications and DNA and gene editing kinds of things.
We've seen gene editing in fruits and vegetables already.
Right, already.
Where they are turning off the gene that causes a fruit to deteriorate.
Correct.
So that it lasts longer than it ever has. So you'll be able to do that with humans
You
as well.
can do that with humans. Somebody living in Petite Rivière de Nip, for example, if they have a bracelet and an agreement with a global platform to provide data, not only does the bracelet collect the blood information on the person on a 24/7 basis, but transmit that information to that platform's cloud, and that person gets some rewards for contributing to the global data set. So that's another form of employment of sorts.
It's monetization of your
private information. Yes. Exactly.
So that can be good and bad, and I think we'll explore that in the episode where we dive a little deeper into that piece, because there are a lot of implications that some people just don't feel very comfortable about how that is moving, and we may need to demystify some of those things. Like selling your data, what does that mean? There's huge privacy concerns around how technology is becoming more invasive. Including examples like Alexa in your home, being able to tell Alexa, the Amazon device, what you want to order, but the Alexa device constantly listening to your conversations and also picking up information that maybe you don't want to be picked up. So there are concerns technological around the technology as well. So we will touch on that in future episodes, but for now, I think we have a pretty solid grasp of these structural forces that contribute to the development of a nation and that need to be seriously considered for anyone to talk about future and prosperity.
Correct.
All right.
All right.
Until the next episode.
Sure.
Thank you.